Thank you for joining this webinar today, Automate Facility Maintenance. My name is Mike Stadelman, VP of Marketing at Versae. I am the host and moderator for today's webinar, and Edward Parker will be joining as a co-moderator.
Hi everybody, this is Edward Parker.
Our guest presenter today is Jerry Stetler from Sprouts Farmers Market. Jerry will join us shortly following a few housekeeping notes. Our agenda today includes a question and answer session during the final 15 minutes of this 1-hour webinar. We welcome your questions. Please submit them via the chat window in your web browser. All call-in lines are currently muted to ensure audio quality. Today's webinar will be recorded and available for replay within the next 2 days. And again, Jerry Stetler, Vice President of Construction and Facility Engineering at Sprouts Farmers Market. Jerry is a 25-year veteran of the supermarket and refrigeration industries. In addition to managing all maintenance and energy, Jerry is responsible for remodels and new construction at Sprouts. Welcome, Jerry. Please get us started with a brief overview of Sprouts.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jerry Stetler. As Mike had stated, I'm with Sprouts Farmers Market. Just a little additional brief history for those of you that don't know me. I started in the industry in 1984 with Fry's Food Stores out of Phoenix, Arizona, and that's a division of Kroger. And approximately 7.5 years ago, I joined the Sprouts team. So, Mike, you're a little generous there with my age, stating that I had 25 years of service, but it's actually about 30 years of service in the grocery industry. But with that, let me give you a little bit of overview for those of you that don't know what Sprouts is or who Sprouts is. We're a full-service natural food store chain with a commitment to fresh and natural foods. We're one of the fastest-growing grocers in the U.S. In 2002, we had 10 stores, and since then, we have grown to 150 stores across 8 states. The growth was partly due to 2 acquisitions along the way. We acquired Henry's Farmers Market in 2010 out of California, and then we acquired Sunflower Farmers Market in 2011. We currently plan to continue our growth pattern at a rate of 20 to 30 stores per year. At Sprouts, we have an internal facility support group. We have a centralized purchasing department that consists of a procurement manager responsible for selecting suppliers and negotiating pricing, and we have 2 purchasing administrative assistants. The centralized purchasing department issues approximately 450 purchase orders per month for replacement equipment and new equipment for our existing stores. And along with these purchase orders, they also process approximately 210 purchase orders for each new store. And once again, we plan on growing 20 to 30 new stores a year. In our facility maintenance call center, we have 3 facility maintenance administrative assistants that process approximately 500 service calls per week for our existing stores. That's 2,000 plus calls that they receive per month for our existing stores. And we currently utilize approximately 250 service providers that service our existing stores across 8 states. In 2012, in our accounting department, we also had 3 full-time employees dedicated to processing and paying invoices. Today, with the Versae program in place, they have 1 full-time employee, and they're using another employee part-time in the accounting department that's dedicated to our support and processing invoices. They were also anticipating adding additional personnel with our growth pattern prior to acquiring the Versae program. With the rapid growth, it definitely drives change. There's no question about it. We quickly recognized the need for more employees, or more importantly, the need for a more complete and efficient operating system. Our challenges that we faced. The manual processes. Imagine for every invoice that came into our department, and I'm not sure how everybody else operates, but this is how we operated with the system that we had prior to this. But for every invoice that came into our department for payment, we physically had to make a copy of that invoice for our records. And then it went on to accounting, and accounting had to make copies for their records. In the facility maintenance department alone, that accounted for 1,000 copies per week and then another 500 copies in the accounting department. Over 500 invoices had to be physically handed off to our facility engineering managers for their review and approval, and then they had to physically hand them back over to our admin staff. My entire staff was working overtime. The morale was low. It got to the point that we were bringing in temporary staff just to attempt to keep up with the data entry of the invoices. And as you can imagine, I'm sure all of you that have dealt with temporary staff, imagine the time it took to train the temporary staff, not to mention the turnover that you have with temporary staff. It was evident to us that we would immediately need to hire at least 2 more personnel on the facility maintenance side and probably an additional employee on the purchasing side. The accounting department was also looking to hire additional personnel. We definitely had outdated financial controls. With the growth of our company came the requirements of tighter financial controls such as cash flow projections, an accurate accrual process, and more timely processing of invoices. With the efficiencies and capability reporting modules of VeriSay, we're able to accomplish all of those today. With VeriSay, we have an accurate method of documenting each individual equipment maintenance history and easily track our energy expenses. With the rapid growth, our expenses were quickly getting out of hand. All we had time for were to process invoices. We didn't have time or the tools to analyze where our expenses were getting out of control. Today we have that. Environmental compliance, I'm sure all of you are dealing with this. Manual processes that we had with our former system was completely outdated and required way too much manual and inefficient data processing on our end. With VeriSay, our service providers are required to enter the type, amount, and what system they added refrigerant to, or their invoices don't get submitted for payment. So if they don't put this information in, their invoice is not going to get submitted for payment, period. In the past, invoices came in regardless of what information they provided us, and it took our admin staff to extract all of that information and then to follow up with phone calls with all of these vendors to get the information that we needed in order to satisfy the reporting requirements of the EPA and the California Air Resource Board. And in just a minute, I'm going to hand it over to Edward to talk a little bit more about the California Air Resources Board and their requirements that are coming up for all of us that have facilities in California. It was also hard to identify troublesome sites. With our old system, we'd have to manually track or remember what sites we were having unusual problems with. With VeriSay, it's set up that we receive automatically emails with this information. So our facility engineering managers are quickly to receive emails with sites that are having issues. We needed reports for increased visibility and accountability. VeriSay can generate just about any report you can imagine, anywhere from tracking costs on individual pieces of equipment to groups of equipment to groups of particular sites, refrigerant usage in pounds, type and sites. It's endless, and we'll talk about some more about the reporting here in just a few minutes. Edward, I'm going to hand this off to you for just a minute or so, and you can expound a little bit on the upcoming reporting requirements for CARB in California.
Thanks, Jerry. This is Edward Parker. For those of you who don't know, the California Air Resources Board is kind of like a duplicate EPA, only tougher. When Jerry bought Sunflower Market and Henry's, he is now due to report to the California Air Resources Board. We have a lot of clients in California, and knowing that their reporting requirements are tough and annual, we decided to do a web service for our clients as part of the deal that takes the information from VeriSay and populates this site. This saves our clients upwards of, let's say a 40-store chain, they'd probably take about 3 days or 2 days of data entry to put that information in the site. Now it's about 15 minutes to an hour, depending on the clarity of the data. So that's what we try to do in our system is listen to our clients and respond to them to decrease data entry. So that's kind of what I wanted to say about that.
Thanks, Edward. Our maintenance costs. There's no question our maintenance cost was getting out of hand. With 250 service providers to manage, it was hard to keep track of their insurance compliance. VeriSay alerts us when their insurance is coming due, and it's hard to manually check to see if their submitted service rates were accurate. VeriSay does that. Service provider invoices don't make it to our office without the required and accurate information from the service providers. Prior to VeriSafe, we didn't have a clear and accurate accountability of our equipment at store level. With the asset tagging program, we do today, and we'll discuss a little more about the asset tagging here in a few minutes. We also didn't have the means of rating our vendors or accurately and easily tracking their contract compliance. With VeriSafe, we can generate reports that can compare like vendors in areas of average cost per call, average time per call, number of callbacks. VeriSafe also holds their rate information, as I mentioned earlier, and if invoices are submitted with inaccurate rates, they'll be automatically rejected. They don't even hit our office. We don't even have to check it. Their rates have to be correct when they send it in. It was totally out of control for us with the old system that we had, trying to manage over 250 service providers across 8 states. Change management. Our previous vendor delayed the upgrade to SaaS. They kept promising us change, but they would never deliver. I don't know how many times, and I'm sure a few of you out there know what vendor that we were using previously. They were great for us when we first started out. There's no question about it, as a very small chain. But with the required reports and the needed control, they just couldn't deliver, even though they promised they would, and we just never got it. So we knew that there was a change that had to be made. Change is hard. We all resist change. There's no question about it. We were resistant to change just like most of us are, even knowing that it's for our own good. We were worried that we couldn't provide the support to our expected, what was expected of us, to our departments during the VeriSafe transition. With the support that we received from VeriSafe, and VeriSafe does have a very good support system, it made the transition seamless to the group that we support. Now let's talk a little bit about being skeptical about an ROI. I'm sure all of you that are considering the change from whatever system you're using today to VeriSafe systems and compare the cost, you're all skeptical about an ROI. We were too. We just knew we couldn't continue to do business the way we were, and having to add additional people, providing additional space for these people, manage these people, and the list goes on and on and on. You'll see in just a few minutes we'll talk a little bit about what our ROI was. Our goals. Our goals was to reduce cost over the current stores. The cost was getting out of control, no question about it. Adding stores without increasing staff. At the rate that we were growing with growth and on the antiquated system that we had, there was no question that adding of staff was going to happen. Improved execution of facility maintenance strategy. Our service to the stores was falling. Improved equipment buying process. The previous process was mimicking our former facility maintenance process with our old service provider. Improved reporting, transparency, and accountability. The need for improved reporting, transparency, and accountability from all levels of our company was becoming increasingly demanding. Involve all stakeholders in the vendor selection process. We wanted involvement from all in our company during the selection process. We included our administrative staff, we included our management staff, we included our accounting staff, and we included our finance staff. We included everybody that we thought would be affected by the change. Technology platform for sustained growth. We needed a platform that had the technology and was willing to adapt and grow with us. VeriSafe was our clear choice. There's no question about it. The implementation process. We started at category level, bad move on our part. Asset tagging. Once again, we'll get into the asset tagging. Despite our urgency, we focused on quality of the implementation, and we didn't rush it. It took us about a year to implement VeriSafe. Looking back, I wish we hadn't waited as long as we did, but we were skeptical, and just as many as you are, I'm sure. It was more of a process change than initially anticipated. Even though we knew we didn't have the best of processes in place, we thought we were doing pretty well. VeriSafe exposed us to new processes in which we all had to take time and to learn these new processes. So there's no question there's going to be some time, there's going to be some training. But for those of us that don't change, we're going to be left in the rears, and we're going to be left in the dust. So Everybody knows
So
it.
Jerry, this is Edward Parker again. It was an interesting time that we had over the course of a year where you guys considered Verisay. And I really think it was because you were going through such a rapid expansion and you had all these different demands, especially from your financial department. The process change really was difficult. But I just want you to know, Jerry, that that's actually very normal across all of our clients and everybody I'm talking to, many of whom are on the line listening right now. It's just hard to wrap your mind around the idea of a process change that is going to make it even harder to do your job over the cost of the implementation process, which is usually about 2 or 3 months. But after that, I think you would agree, Jerry, that it's worth it.
There's no question about it. I wish we had started earlier with the process, and when we had fewer stores, and quite frankly, when we weren't going through a conversion of 2 chains that we just purchased. But we made it through, and actually, even though it was, I don't want to make it sound terrible. It wasn't totally painstaking for us. Internally here for our department, but it was actually seamless across the people that we provided service to. Nobody even knew that we were making this change until we started the training process with our store management people. Let's talk a little bit about the asset tagging. I look back at it and it's a little comical. Looking back at it, I didn't think it was initially. And we were totally resistant to the asset tagging. We initially opposed the asset tagging. We didn't see a need for it. As far as I was concerned, each asset that we wanted to track had a tag, and that tag in my mind was the serial number. Coming from the service field, myself, I knew that each piece of equipment had serial numbers, and from my experience, I pretty much know where to find the serial numbers. Believe me, store management doesn't know where to find serial numbers. And a lot of the service providers don't know where to find serial numbers. And sometimes the serial numbers aren't even there or even legible. It soon became apparent to me that we needed to have our assets tagged appropriately and where all retail management could easily find it and identify it. Not to mention our finance group wanting this accomplished. Don't discount the importance of the asset tagging. It's very important in order for this entire program to work properly. Work order processing, we implemented Verisay's best practices. The information provided on vendor work orders that becomes populated in the Verisay program is very important. The processing of work orders today is just a push of a button. Let's talk about the results we achieved, the hard savings. Our easy hard savings were the avoidance of adding additional personnel, space, management, to manage these people, tracking calls, immediate rejection of inaccurate invoicing, rejection from our facility management, and automatic dead invoices after 90 days. We set a policy in if we have rejected an invoice or if we have a rejected invoices and it has not been resolved within 90 days, it's going to go to a dead file and we're not going to pay that invoice. And it's working today. Immediate improvement of managing invoices from our vendors. Once again, invoices don't get submitted for approval and payment without all of the required information, and it must be accurate. The soft savings, moving from a manual to an automated processes. Easy ones are no handling or copying of invoices, automated invoice approval or rejection process. Once again, for those of you that are physically handling paper invoices today, just imagine, I mean, it's amazing. Just imagine this going away. I mean, just going away. It was like a miracle to us. We had facility engineering administrative assistants standing in front of files every single day. We had piles of papers around their desk every single day. They were standing in front of copy machines every single day. It's amazing. That doesn't happen anymore. And talk about a happy staff. We got a happy staff. We had better tracking on project costs, and we had better tracking of equipment performance. Better and accurate reporting for our department and our finance department. Our estimated ROI was 1 year, and I believe that I'm being conservative at that. The ROI at the headquarters, the manual processes were now automated. You know, I just mentioned that. Everything is automated. It's all electronic. We still have some phone calls that are coming in from the stores, following up, but it's just a matter of training these people. Every single day it gets easier. Every single day the store managers get a little more adapted to the program, and they can track their calls 100% on Verasay. Accurate and faster reporting. Our finance department couldn't be happier. We just went through a painstaking process, and I really can't get into the reasons for it, but we had PricewaterhouseCoopers in our facility for about a year. And if we had not had Verasay set up at the time, it would have been even more of a nightmare having these people go through your processes with a fine-tooth comb. Better oversight of vendors. Like I said, the vendors cannot submit invoices without all of the information that we require them to have on those invoices, and improve financial controls, the reporting to the finance company, the improved controls that we have with the vendor invoicing being accurate, and with the rejection process that we have with Verasay, and the reconciliation with the invoices with the vendors today. Our operations personnel are more efficient and are more effective. Okay, other parts of the ROI at the store level. It allows the managers to focus on sales. It's very easy for them to submit a call today. They just log on to Verasay, they submit the call, and once again they can track that call on Verasay all the way through to the very end. The uptime on the equipment, we're experiencing today that the uptime on equipment is approximately 2 to 3% quicker than it was before because of the Verasay program. Reduced maintenance costs. The reduced maintenance costs is because of all the controls that we have on our vendors today with the Verasay program. Fewer instances of food loss, of course, with the increased uptime or the faster uptime. We have reduced shrink, reduced food loss. The stores are happier and they're more focused on the customers. Lessons learned. Don't underestimate the need for the process change and advanced planning. Change in behavior and processes takes time. There's no question about it. Before we got into this, once again, we were hesitant about the change. We knew we had to change, and once we got into it, it was evident to us that this change needed to take place a long time ago. There's no question about it. So don't underestimate the need for this process. The sooner you get started, the better. I had mentioned this earlier. I wish we had started this before we had the acquisition process. It would have been a much easier transition once we acquired the two additional change, and we would have started reaping the ROI a lot sooner. Leverage industry best practices. Asset tagging, we talked about that. It's very, very important. Automated workflows, talked about that. No more paper. It's all automatic. It's pushes of buttons, and it's just reading on the screen a few times. Reporting environmental compliance, no question about it. Before we did this, we were actually inputting all of the information internally here with our admin staff off of the invoices that we received. And many times when we receive the invoices, and I'm sure it happens to a lot of you out there today, that the service provider on the refrigerant usage side would say that they added refrigerant. Well, they wouldn't tell you what system they added it to. They wouldn't tell you what type of refrigerant they added. They wouldn't tell you how many pounds of refrigerant they added. Today, that's all automated on their end, or their invoices don't get submitted. And they learn quickly to get this in there. We involved the stakeholders. We talked about this. We help define your needs to everybody involved, all the way from the admin staff to the accounting and finance department. Develop a custom tailored solution. Gain buy-in from internal and external stakeholders. Once we introduced the Verasay program to our accounting and finance department, it was clear to them that this was definitely the program that they wanted to see us utilizing. Be open to a bigger vision. Be educated through the selection process. plan for the future, not just the immediate needs. When we say be open to a bigger vision, there is so much that Verasay, we haven't even chipped off the tip of the iceberg yet, and we're continuing to see and continuing to find what's inside of Verasay and what types of reports and programs that are available. And we are also getting ready to institute even a newer or even tougher controls on our vendors going forward. What's the next steps in our vision? Reporting, next level with Advanced Analytics Query Studio. Verasay has just come out with Query Studio, and we will start this. We had a brief overview of Query Studio. Once again, this is going to open us up to even more reports that are going to be totally helpful to us. The mobile technology, who doesn't have an iPhone out there or a smartphone out there today? Everybody has a smartphone out there today. Even my grandkids have smartphones. So everybody's walking around with smartphones. We are going to be able to, with the Verasay technology, to have the people log in, to have the vendors, individual vendors log into our facilities when they come in off of their smartphone rather than using a kiosk that we provided for them. And we can talk about the kiosk program offline here once we get into the questions if you'd like to go into that.
I do have a couple of questions coming in here via chat. The first one, Jerry, could you expound just a little bit on how you were able to get service providers to adopt this system and it really get them to get up to speed on using it on a day-to-day basis?
Well, as I mentioned, we have 250 vendors. I don't know who's asking the question and how many vendors that they're dealing with, but 250 vendors across 8 states is quite a bit. And those vendors range anywhere from a ma and pa to a very large organization like Hill Phoenix, Hussman, Hobart, as a lot of us, I'm sure, all use. We introduced the system to them. We initially introduced the system to them and showed them the advantages that we would have. The advantages that they would have. Some of the advantages to them is they can accurately track also what their service technicians are doing. The paying of invoices, and this is the big thing for them, the paying of invoices was going to be very simple. And quite frankly, we told them, hey, this is the wave of the future. This is the way it's going. We're not the only vendor out there or the only user out there of Verasay. There are other users of Verasay, and quite frankly, you're going to find that some of your vendors are probably already using Verasay with some of the other companies out there. And at the end of the day, we pretty much told them that this is a change, and you're going to have to change with us if you want to be with us. And with the program, with the training programs that Verasay offered them, I believe they had anywhere from 3 to 5 different webinars of training these people. We had training sessions, practice sessions with them. Was there resistance from a couple? Yeah, there were. But once they got onto the system, and once they started using the system, and once they started seeing their invoices being processed in a more timely manner, they all jumped on it, and they're all happy about it. And I am going to tell you that we lost one vendor. Out of 250 vendors, we lost one vendor, and we were hard set in stone to tell all of our vendors that, guys, this is it. If you're not on board, then I'm sorry, we're going to have to change. We're going to have to make another change on that particular vendor. And we had one vendor that refused to do it, and I'm sorry to say it was a very small vendor. It was a husband and wife locksmith vendor. They had the capability. It's not that they didn't have the capability or the technology to log on to Verasay. They just flat refused to do it. And we refused to do business with them, so we moved on.
Good.
Jerry, this is Edward. I have a question from the field. What was the percent decrease in cost that you've discovered? I understand that may be a difficult one to answer, but go ahead.
Are we talking? Is the question a decreased cost in in the facility maintenance costs from our service providers?
I think that's it. It's kind of an overall question. Did you discover, or do you feel that there has been a decrease in overall maintenance costs as a result, and can you specify a percentage?
Yeah, I'm going to say, you know, because we're still gathering this information, and we're still probably gaining more benefits on it as the time goes on and as we get better with the invoice processing system. But I'm going to say that we probably saw anywhere from a 7 to 10% decrease. Wasn't immediate. It took a little bit of time, and I'm going to say probably over about 8 or 9 months we started to see that solid 7 to 10%. Now, as far as the savings, we talked about it a little earlier. I don't know about the rest of you and what your plans are and how fast you're growing and what your processes are. But as I had mentioned, with the manual processes that we had in place and we don't today, we were definitely going to be adding on to the company to support our side of it at least 5 people, and that included some people in the accounting and finance department. And that didn't happen. That was immediate savings for us, absolute immediate savings. And the space to put these people in, I mean, we have to think about all of this, the benefits, the space, the management, to manage these people. That didn't happen. That didn't happen with the VeriSafe program when we took away our manual processes. So those were some good hard savings right there, immediate.
Jerry, another question. Is compliance important to you from the EPA standpoint, and do you feel that the system helps keep you in compliance with EPA?
Well, the first question, absolutely, compliance is important. I don't know who's asking the question, but there are some major chains out there right now that have faced and are facing huge fines for not being compliant with the EPA, and God only knows what's going to come about with the California CARB requirements in March of next year. So being compliant is absolutely important to us, not only for the fine side of it, but also being a responsible retailer out there, and being a member of Green Chill. And going back on the some of the people that aren't compliant today and have been caught not being compliant today, are not allowed to be members of Green Chill either today until they do have a good standing with the EPA. And with VeriSafe, it's automatic. It's automatic. We don't have the manual processes, and granted, there is a manual process still involved, but it's not on our side. It's on the vendor side. And we don't have those manual processes. We did before. It took time. We weren't sure it was totally accurate. Today, with the VeriSafe program, it's all automatic and it's all right there. EPA can walk into any of our facilities, and we can bring it up on the VeriSafe program, and we can show them exactly what is required by the EPA right there on a screen and be compliant. It's very important to us.
How are you able to determine what to tag as an asset? As 30 days for 150 stores seems insurmountable. So how did you, to paraphrase, how did you come up with which assets you should tag, and, you know, based on whatever criteria you have? And second, 30 days for 150 stores seems pretty fast.
It was, we included the finance and accounting department on this decision. Where I came from prior to Sprouts, I mean, that company tagged the chair I was sitting in, and I think that was a little over the top. And maybe some of the reporting requirements doesn't require you to report such things as of that dollar amount. But what we came up with, our accounting and finance department, what they decided was that any piece of equipment that initially cost us over $1,000, we were going to track. So that's what we determined that we were going to do. And quite frankly, whoever's asking the question on 150 stores for 30 days, believe me, I didn't believe it could happen either. Verasay put together a team that came in. We did a couple of stores here locally, close to our office, so that we can go check the stores and make sure that the tagging was being placed in places that could be easily seen, and that they were going to be there and stay there, and that we were tagging, and that Verasay was also capturing all of the pieces of equipment that we required them to capture. So after the first 2 days, and we went and looked at them, everything was fine. We made a couple adjustments. We set them loose. They gave us the schedule, and it happened.
Another question, you've kind of answered it, but maybe you can just answer it again in a different way. How do you make service vendors comply with this new program? How do you force them?
Well, I guess the easy answer is, and I don't want to sound cold and hard about it, but the easy answer is that this is the program that we are adopting, and this is the program that we're going to be on. You're either with us or you're not with us. And believe me, I don't care if you have 10 stores, 30 stores, 40 stores, 150 stores, or 500 stores. I can't imagine a vendor, with the exception of the one that I mentioned, I can't imagine any vendor that wants to give up any business or can't afford to give up any business today. They're going to get on the program. And once again, I don't want to sound callous, but it was you're either with us or you're not with us.
Oh, okay, we have another question. Can you speak to the reporting specifically of this program, as what measurable metrics has it given you?
Oh, God. On the finance side, if you want to know on the finance side and the accounting side, I would love to have whoever's asking that question contact me, and I would link them up with our accounting and finance people and let them expound on the reports that are available from Verasay, that they can extract from Verasay, that helps them tremendously. And then on our side, we pull reports, and I mean, we can go on forever here, and whoever's asking the question, I encourage them to contact me, and I can expound a little more on it. But we pull a report every single week that tells us we have a budget, just like everybody else does, for every single period. The end of the very first week of every period, we pull a report and we look and see where our stores are compared to their budget. We can send out reports through Verasay to the stores and letting them know that, hey guys, for the stores, now we don't send it to the stores that are way under budget because we don't want them spending the money, but the stores that are creeping up on their budget for their period, we send out alerts to those stores and say, hey guys, you guys are getting close to your budget for the month. Hold off on things that absolutely are not necessary for repairs. We pull reports that show us the amount of calls on like vendors, like very simple vendors, refrigeration vendors, and on like stores. And when I say like stores, age of stores, all stores that are 10 years old across the country, refrigeration vendors that are servicing these stores. What's the average calls of these vendors? What's the average length of calls? What's the average cost per call? Do we have a vendor that's way out there that's servicing the same amount of stores and the same type of stores as another vendor that's not spending that kind of money on that store? Then we can go back and we can look at that vendor and evaluate that vendor and figure out why we're spending so much money on that vendor. I mean, guys, the reporting process, I mean, I can go on and on. There are a ton of reports that can be extracted. Reporting on equipment history, reporting on equipment performance. We can evaluate new pieces of equipment that we put in the stores. What's it costing us to maintain that piece of equipment? We can have alerts set up in Verasay that once we hit a certain threshold on a piece of equipment, if we spent $5,000 on a $6,000 or $7,000 piece of equipment, hey guys, it's time to replace that piece of equipment. Are we seeing those trends on all of those pieces of equipment, that we're spending too much money on maintaining those pieces of equipment, and should we consider changing to a different manufacturer or a different type of piece of equipment? Just goes on and on, guys. There's a ton of reports available to you. You can create any report that you can imagine. And I can't even imagine what's going to happen when Query comes out now. I have an accountant and a finance person that's salivating to get started on the Query program, because they just love all of the reports that they can pull from Verasay.
I can verify that. Hey, Jerry, a couple more questions. Can you explain the whole process that happens from first the breakdown in equipment until the technician is dispatched and the invoice is submitted? Can you kind of explain, in step form how that works?
Okay, let me see if I can walk through the process. The store manager identifies a piece of equipment that needs a repair. They log into Verasay, and there is certain requirements for them to even log in a call. And one of those requirements is the asset tag, so we know what asset that we're talking about that we need to call on. That call, it can go two different ways. You can have it set up in Verasay that call can go directly, electronically, to the vendor that you have assigned for that piece of equipment to repair. And once that hits that vendor has to log on and say, yep, we received that call and we are dispatching. They'll be there, in 1 hour, 2 hours, or whatever the case may be. And the store manager can view all of this if he's wanting to know and track where that certain call is. Now, on some certain pieces of equipment, we still utilize our internal facility maintenance administrators or dispatchers, whatever you like to call them. And the store manager logs the call. That comes into our house here, and then our facility engineering administrators will send that call electronically out to the service provider. That service provider acknowledges that they received the call, once again puts on Verasay the amount of time that they expect that it's going to take for them to get out there. Service provider shows up at the store. They go to the kiosk. They log in. Now, the store manager knows that person logged in, and we can track the time that they were there at that store. They have to log in. Service provider does the service on the piece of equipment, goes back to the kiosk, and logs out. Now, that sends that work order electronically to their office. And their office will receive the work order, and they'll fill in whatever required information that we require of that particular vendor, and then they will create an invoice off of that work order. Once they've created an invoice off of that work order, that invoice will be electronically sent to us, and that goes straight to the approving authority in my department, which is one of the facility engineering managers. It no longer goes to the facility administrative assistants anymore. They have nothing to do with these invoices anymore. Back when we had the paper process, they had to receive these. They had to open up an envelope. They had to cut open an envelope, pull out an invoice, figure out who it was, log in the information to the old antiquated system that we had, pile these things up, get them to our facility engineering managers. That doesn't happen anymore. Once that invoice is sent from the service provider, it goes electronically directly to my facility engineering managers. They can log in at their leisure whenever they want to and review the invoices. Now, they can, at that point, my facility engineering managers can approve the invoice. Once they approve the invoice, it's the touch of a button. That goes directly to my accounting department, and that alerts my accounting department electronically to pay that invoice. Now, if my facility engineering manager determines that there's a problem with that invoice or he has questions about that invoice, maybe that service provider was at the store too long, or whatever the case may be, my facility engineering manager then rejects that invoice through Verasay and puts the reason in the rejection, types in the reason why he rejected it, and that goes directly back to the service provider. Now the service provider has to respond to that rejection. And most of the time, all of all of the rejections are reconciled through Verisay electronically. Very rarely over the phone, unless it's a very, very tough rejection. And as I mentioned before, we have it set up that if for whatever reason that this vendor does not respond to a rejected invoice within 90 days, that goes to a dead file, and we don't pay it. They had 90 days to respond to a rejected invoice. So believe me, they want to get these things reconciled, and I'm sure a lot of you have experienced this in the past, that period 12 is probably one of your most experienced periods, because that's when everybody is trying to get all of their aging invoices in and get it paid by the end of the year. It's not happening anymore. So that's kind of, I hope that explained the process to everybody.
That was a very good explanation. Jerry, another question. How much support was provided by Verisay?
Well, I don't know how to answer that. That's all of the support that you needed. They were here. They provided all of the support. They flew out here. They were here physically. They supported us through the training process of our internal people here. We had webinars. They're there to support our vendors through the process of our vendors trying to learn the program, which is not that difficult. Verisay was here to support us, and they're still here to support us. They haven't gone away. The people that we had before, it doesn't even compare to the support level that we received from Verisay and what we got from our previous vendor.
Jerry, another question. Do you make use of standard costs and times to evaluate invoices? And I think this is a question relating to a couple of things. I think it's first of all potentially contracts, and then and SLAs. But it could also mean is there a reporting? Are there best practices within the Verisay system that allow you to understand standard costs and times? So again, I'm going to read the question. Do you make use of standard costs and times to evaluate invoices?
I'm going to say yes, we do. And maybe not so much on the evaluating the invoices themselves, but evaluating the vendor, the like vendors. We utilize that quite a bit. I'm going to say that the experience from our facility engineering managers, they all came from the field. We rely more on them when they're reviewing invoices to determine whether or not the amount of time and the cost for any given call falls within their experiences.
I want to just extend a special thank you, Jerry, for your insightful story, your great comments and experience, and Edward for your commentary as well.
Yes, have a nice day, everybody.